It was a typical Friday after school, the kind where I relished in the freedom of having the house to myself. With my parents at work until later in the evening and my older brother off doing who knows what, I reveled in the chance to unwind. As soon as I stepped off the bus, I dove straight into my comfort zone, shedding the strict school attire for cozy sweatpants and an oversized t-shirt that I'd never wear in public. There was something magical about that transition from school to home, a feeling of relief and relaxation. Following my usual routine of a quick shower, some snacks, and eager anticipation for my friends to hop online for gaming, I learned my parents would be out at a party a few hours away. The prospect of having the house all to myself thrilled me, even though they reminded me to be cautious and contact our trusted neighbors in case of an emergency. Hours slipped by, and exhaustion crept in unexpectedly, foiling my plans for an all-night gaming spree. As I lay in bed, engrossed in social media and videos, a sudden noise outside startled me. Peering cautiously through the blinds, I spotted a car unfamiliar to me pulling into our driveway, only to swiftly reverse and speed off down the street towards the wooded trail at the end. Though it could have been innocuous, my instincts told me otherwise. Minutes turned into forgetfulness until a jarring yell shattered the silence. Someone had broken into our home. Panic surged through me as I realized I had to act fast. With no means to defend myself, I hastily barricaded the door and contemplated hiding under the bed, my last resort. The intruder's aggressive attempts to enter my room intensified my fear. In a desperate move, I managed to call the police, and thankfully, an officer arrived swiftly. The intruder, still in my doorway, lunged at the officer, resulting in a confrontation that left the intruder injured from a gunshot. After recounting the traumatic events to the police, and with the intruder in custody, I contacted my parents, who rushed home. Now, that man awaits trial while I grapple with the terror of that night, making me dread being home alone. It's an experience that's etched into my memory, making solo nights a source of fear rather than freedom. Years ago, my parents had the garage converted into a spacious bedroom/hangout area where gaming sessions and parties were a regular thing. I was around 10 years old. One of the few times I found myself alone in the house while my siblings were off elsewhere. I spent the night engrossed in our PS2, relishing the freedom. The converted space boasted a wall window and a typical front door complete with bolt and doorknob locks. Engrossed in my game, it took me a while to realize the tapping on the window wasn't part of the gameplay. A rhythmic drumming of fingers in a distinctive pattern, 1 2 3 4, repeated rapidly, continued for what felt like an eternity. Maybe around 5 unsettling minutes, the eerie drumming finally ceased. When a knock rattled the doorknob, panic surged as I stealthily checked the locks, discovering to my horror that they were unlocked, though the door often seemed stuck unless forcefully secured. Locking them loudly, I hoped to deter the unwelcome visitor, but his response was chilling. An older man's sigh followed by a disturbing laugh, escalating into aggressive banging on the door. Fear immobilized me as he moved to peer through a covered window, his shadow looming ominously. Frozen in terror, I stood motionless until he pleaded, "Let me in. Love, I'm cold and hungry. Don't you want to be nice to your neighbor?" I acted impulsively, plunging into darkness, hiding in my closet until my parents returned from their anniversary date. Oblivious to the harrowing ordeal, I'd endured out of fear of getting in trouble for being up past bedtime. Last year, I was renting a house in a small, economically struggling old mining town nestled in Virginia. Living alone, I experienced an unsettling incident during one of the first warm nights of spring that left me on edge. Around 4 a.m., I awoke abruptly in my living room recliner to the eerie sound of my doorknob turning persistently. Initially thinking it was a mistaken address, I shouted a quick, "Hey, wrong place." But the situation escalated when the door started shaking violently, and a hand began pounding on it. Fearing for my safety, I hastily grabbed a knife from the kitchen and dialed the police, staying put until help arrived. By the time the officers arrived, the person had vanished, leaving no trace. Despite their thorough search, the police found no one. I tried to carry on with my day, but anxiety lingered, making it impossible to return to sleep. After work, arriving home, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone might have broken in, despite finding no evidence. As the evening wore on, around 9:30 or 10 p.m., I lay on the couch engrossed in a book when a sudden, peculiar noise jolted me. It seemed internal, but I couldn't discern its origin. Shortly after, muffled voices reached my ears. Their words indistinguishable. The unnerving realization hit me someone was there. Panic set in as I frantically scanned the area, only for the sound to abruptly cease. Then, an ear-splitting scream shattered the silence, an otherworldly, demonic howl that jolted me into action. Realizing the crawl space as a potential hiding spot, I debated calling the police, but opted to investigate myself, not wanting to risk seeming paranoid. Venturing outside and circling the house, I aimed to access the crawl space exteriorly, an area I'd never explored before. To my shock, I discovered a man seemingly asleep or possibly under the influence of heavy drugs. Keeping my composure, I immediately notified the authorities and stepped away, waiting for their arrival. When the police arrived, they extracted the man, sending him to the hospital and then to jail. To my horror, I learned he'd been practically living beneath my house, equipped with a sleeping bag, a lantern, and stored food. The revelation left me shaken. I couldn't fathom how I hadn't noticed his presence all that time, and the experience haunted my sleep for weeks to come.